and we're all waiting for Cleveland Golden State because that's the matchup that saves the NBA postseason, faux show. But there's a notion of tanking games late in the year. Now, the New York Knicks were tanking games without tanking them on purpose, unfortunately.
And then when they go to tank it, they can't tank it, and they win it.
And the very last game of the year, they make a buzzer beater, which winds up costing them 2 spots in a great NBA draft.
So they end up kind of lose by winning.
Absolutely correct. But we've said many times, you can't tell your players that are playing, don't try your hardest. And no player that's on the court, while they might be playing the 10th, 11th, and 12th man, those guys are out there busting their ass because they want a new contract, most likely, right?
That's the thought process, yes.
Mark Cuban came out yesterday because he hadn't been in the news in a couple of days, and he misses it kind of like an infant misses their wubby or their blankie or whatever the case may be. And he goes, I'll be honest about it, we were tanking games after being eliminated from the postseason because it's such a great draft.
Right, and he basically says he's tanking games by playing the young players. He's not saying that the players are tanking.
Correct.
He's saying that the decisions made by management as to who to play basically indicates to them that they are tanking and they're trying to get a better draft choice.
In theory, lesser players are on the court for a longer period of time.
And he's very open and transparent about it. We were tanking. That's what we were doing.
Now, there's an aspect to that you just have to hate. Especially if you're a paying customer.
But there's also an aspect to that is transparent and honest and basically telling you what you already knew.
But let me walk you through why, if you are a fan, why you should want your team to tank. So the New York Knicks were not trying to tank. They just suck. And even in winning a game, as you say, they hurt themselves. Here's why you want to tank games. And I'm literally, we're going to go back 20 years because there's a great example, okay?
All right.
The San Antonio Spurs, way back in the day.
Way back in the day. This was the draft that got them Tim Duncan.
That's exactly correct.
Yes.
Right? So David Robinson was the all-world player.
He was the admiral.
That is correct. And they tanked games. All right?
So did they not play him?
The only one, he had like some kind of fugazi injury. Can he play? They only won 20 games that year. And by only winning 20 games that year, they gave themselves the best shot of getting the first pick in the draft. And they wound up taking Tim Duncan with that pick. And that day, of course, Robinson comes back healthy, the next season. You now have David Robinson and a young Tim Duncan, right?
And you have the future set up perfectly for the San Antonio Spurs, assuming that Tim Duncan stays healthy and gives you what Tim Duncan ultimately gave you, and that is an unselfish big star who is probably one of the most underappreciated players outside of San Antonio, because I can't imagine that the San Antonio Spurs fans, don't appreciate him and don't appreciate what he gave them.
Now, think about what happened. In that year, which was 1995, 1996, Sean Elliott plays in all of 39 games. Chuck Person sits out the entire year with back spasms. The Admiral, David Robinson, plays all of 6 games that season. They wind up starting out the year 3-15, so they fire Bob Hill. The general manager of that team was a guy named Gregg Popovich. Popovich inserted himself as head coach. They went from 3-15. They wound up going 20-62. From that minute on, it's the only losing record Popovich has ever had as a head coach in the NBA. The very next year, they won over 50 games. And I believe, if I have this right, made the playoffs 17 consecutive years after that.
Hence why you want to do what Mark Cuban says they did. You want to tank a game.
The concept of it sucks. And if I'm a paying fan and I go to a game, I want my team out there trying to win every game.
But I would also tell you that it's not an infallible way of doing things, because take a look at the Philadelphia 76ers. How many times have they tanked games? How many high draft picks have they had? And what do they have to show for it right now? Nothing.